Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Jones. Welcome to interCHANGE. Thank you so very much for joining us. No shortage of stuff to talk about this week. Once again, Wisconsin is in the national news because of organized labor and an incredibly disorganized and dysfunctional state legislature. We'll talk about the governor's proposal to balance the budget. We'll talk about word that's leaking out about how he's going to dramatically change the Milwaukee public school system and the UW-Madison. We'll talk about the Milwaukee Area Technical College giving teachers a new contract at the 11th hour with storm clouds on the horizon. And we'll take a few minutes to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers starting spring training, if we have the time.
Oh, we better have the time.
We'll have the time. Joining us tonight are longtime State Senate Republican aide and oftentimes a fill-in host over at WISN Radio, Kevin Fischer, newspaper columnist Joel McNally, and Gerard Randall, consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, let's get right into the drama playing out in Madison. It's been going on all week. The governor comes up with some very moderate proposals to balance the budget. Organized labor freaks out. Teachers call in sick, leave their kids, close down schools, and go to Madison to demonstrate. Democratic state senators start crying and just pick up and run away to Illinois so that a vote can't be held.
What a great intro, Dan.
How unbelievably embarrassing for the state of Wisconsin, Kevin.
Well,
I like to do the show in a minute. But.
Well, you'll get your shot. You'll get your shot. But it was pretty ugly and not a very good moment for organized labor or for the Democrat Party. I think Scott Walker nailed it today in his various media appearances when he said that put it in perspective, the vast majority of state and local employees, there are 300,000 of them, did the right thing, did the noble thing, and went to work this week. There's a loud minority that has taken over the state capitol in thuggish, goonish fashion, and they need to be heard, and they are being heard. On the other hand, you have teachers who walk off the job, and the next time you hear one of them say, you know, it's all for the children, take that with a grain of salt. It's not. They're misleading these kids and deceiving them. They don't even know why they were dragged there as pawns. They think they're there because the teachers are going to lose their jobs and that there's going to be major cuts and layoffs, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I believe that this is indeed, as you called it, a modest proposal. Nobody loses their job. Nobody loses their pensions. Nobody gets laid off. Nobody loses their health benefits. All the governor is saying is that the public sector, which has been on the gravy train for a long time, now you have to, like the people that pay their salaries, the people that pay their benefits, pay a little more. And even after this passes, and it will, because the Senate Democrats can't stay hiding like cowards in another state forever. Yeah, this will pass, and public sector employees in the state of Wisconsin will still have it pretty doggone good. They still will be able to collectively bargain for wages. They have civil protections that are the best in the country, and there's no reason for this craziness to be going on at the state capitol.
Joel, we do have a system, though. We do have a system. We elect state legislators, show up, either vote yes or vote no, and then move on.
No, that's not the system. The system, we have a system is called collective bargaining. If the governor does want, all the state employees to take drastic wage cuts and benefit cuts and add much more to their pension, what they pay for pensions, you sit down and bargain with them. That's collective bargaining. You don't announce that because you want to do all these things to them, you're going to have to wipe out collective bargaining for every public employee in the state. That's not the system. That's not collective bargaining. That's, it's like I couldn't win this in collective bargaining, so I guess I'll rewrite the laws so that I win it by changing what the law is.
But isn't that exactly what he's doing?
You know what
He's
else?
being pretty upfront, though.
No, he has not been upfront. I remember this man running for governor of the state of Wisconsin. You know what he ran for governor on? He ran for governor on jobs, and more jobs. He did not run for governor saying, I want to wipe out collective bargaining for all public employees in the state. He did not say, I want to lay off thousands of state employees or gut their pensions and benefits and wages. He did not say, I'm going to rewrite the laws. So Kevin says they can still collectively bargain. They cannot.
On wages.
They cannot on wages.
Yes, they can.
What they do is they wipe out collective bargaining on everything but wages. And you know what they can bargain on wages? They can bargain. You can take a raise up to the cost of inflation and no more. Let me think. What would the bargaining be on that? Well, let me think. I'll take a raise up to the cost of inflation, I guess, or not. That's not collective bargaining. Then there's every year the employees are going to be voting on whether they even have a union or not. Why should they have a union? You've taken all the powers away from the unions. This is why this is a national story. This is a national story not because of anything done here in Wisconsin, although I'm very proud of the demonstrators and the tens of thousands of people who turned out to protest. And I'm very proud of the Democratic state senators who intentionally, said, stop. We have to stop this process. The reason why teachers had to walk off their jobs to protest was because the Republicans were going to pass this in a matter of hours. There is no time to, we don't want the public to come in and tell us anything. We don't want to listen. We don't want to listen to the public. We just want to grease this through the legislature. The only way the Democratic state senators could stop it was, to stop the process and say, listen to the public. This is democracy. Paul Ryan, of all people, is the one that compared what's going on in Madison to what happened in Egypt. He said it was like Cairo moving to Madison. He said that on television this morning. That is what this is. This is democracy. All these drastic, extreme proposals never came up in the election. The governor, Scott Walker said he was running on jobs. He didn't say he was running to kill trains and 10,000 jobs. And he didn't say he was running to gut all the benefits of state employees and take away collective bargaining.
If it's such a bad idea,
taking away collective bargaining is a bad idea.
Even if you consider that a bad idea, couldn't they change the law? And then if it was such a horrible idea, the people would reelect a bunch of Democrats and they would change the law again.
Well, that's probably what is a long-term strategy that the Democrats are holding to.
Actually, it's not even long-term. They're going to start the recalls now.
They'll start some recalls,
and Alberta Darling in this area.
That will lead to some money being spent and more political campaigns that will hype the rhetoric once again in preparation for the 2012 presidential elections, where this state will be a critical component of that election and the reelection of the president. Here's, though, what I think people are missing out on. There are several components to this piece. Part of it is the concessions that employees are expected to give back. Another part are the bargaining rights that are certainly going to be curtailed. My guess is that some of that will probably come back through and be softened somewhat, but not a whole heck of a lot. The Democrats certainly have now been galvanized to go out and figure out ways to shift this back again. I don't know, though, given the way the public is now paying attention to this and the focus has been on the wage piece, I don't know whether or not they're getting a whole lot of sympathy from folk other than those who are in unions to reverse it. The other piece that I think, is interesting about this is you've got a governor that has looked at this from the long haul and said, if we move this ability to the municipalities that will also in the future have to negotiate these things, it's going to be contingent upon local elected officials to have a spine and come to the table with some of these wage and benefit proposals that certainly the rank and file are not going to be happy with, and that will probably be where the most intimidation is going to occur by union folk. And that's on the local elected officials who will be taking a look at their budgets and saying, if we can get some significant concessions on the benefit package, if nothing else, like at MPS or like at the city and the county, where they're paying 65% plus on the benefit end. If they can get concessions on that end, that would help provide some relief to their budgets. But that's not the piece that's being talked about right now. And unfortunately, that's probably the biggest component that's in there other than the givebacks that...
Now, you want to know another real strong point that has never been talked about in all this. It is how valuable collective bargaining is to management. Collective bargaining isn't just for the unions to get whatever they want. Collective bargaining is very much a tool for management as well. Have you ever walked, and I know we all have, walked in a department store where everybody working there hates their jobs and could care less about giving you any kind of service? We've all done that. If people hate their jobs, if people are not satisfied with their jobs, if people feel they don't have a voice in their own lives and their own jobs, they don't do very good jobs.
But Joel, in this case,
and that is exactly what killing collective bargaining is. Collective bargaining gives the employees a voice in their own lives and in their own jobs.
But in this case, though, management is the taxpayers, and there's 5.5 million of them. Let's keep it in perspective. You got 10 or 15, 20,000 people jammed inside and outside the Capitol. For once, somebody is thinking about the people that pay the bill.
If taxpayers are the management, they should want good unions, because good unions and good union management relations are what make a good
they
employee.
Should want the sacrifice.
It's what makes
should want the sacrifice to be meted out fairly.
This man, Gerard Randall, taught this kind of thing when he was doing job training, that the way you get good employees is to treat them fairly and to give them a voice.
And they have
and to kill that voice.
Employees. They have been treated beyond fairly.
Nonsense.
And now we're saying that
the fact that they have managed to hang
we have to bring
on,
their benefits.
The fact that they may be the last employees,
the last
employees in America,
private sector employees.
The fact they may be the last employees in America to hang on to some health care and some pensions, and most of those have been wiped out in the private sector, and people say, well, look at those horrible unions. They have health care.
Joel, they have jobs, they have tenure, they have benefits.
Why should it be that
some people don't have jobs?
We are going to race to the bottom instead of trying to create good jobs in this country?
They have good jobs, they have good benefits, and the private sector pays for them.
Scott Walker has not done.
Come on, let's be fair.
Scott Walker has not done a single thing to create a job since he's taken office. He's done all these things to damage jobs.
Related to this is a lot of publicity about the budget he may or may not announce next week, and word is leaking out now that that's going to include dramatic cuts to the Milwaukee Public School District.
No question it is.
And which will completely force MPS to change dramatically, and possibly spinning off the UW-Madison.
Well, let's be fair here.
Spinning off the UW-Madison from the UW system. I'm interested if you think, okay, so he can't do much with MPS other than control their funding or make a proposal to control their funding. Is this a good idea to force change in MPS? And then you, being a former regent, I would like to know, is it a good idea to take Madison out of the UW system?
Two pieces. Let me say on the Madison piece first. No, it is not a good idea to take it out of the system. I don't think that's what's being proposed, although every year that comes up as a proposal from someone. It's come up in front of the regents from time to time as an idea that should be examined. Various chancellors have weighed in on it, Madison chancellors, and they're the ones that tend to argue for it because they say the campus is unlike the others. But there's a good reason why they're a part of the system, and they share benefits that accrue to the other campuses, the smaller campuses. We've got a coordinated system now. It would be less coordinated if Madison were not a piece of that. I think what happened in terms of the communications piece between the chancellor and the regents and the leadership of the system, those things, it happens. But I don't know whether or not there's enough support, even in the legislature. I don't think there's enough support to do that, because if these individual campuses and their communities start to weigh in, you're going to see something different.
Madison has been the sacred cow, but not to the point where I think the legislature is going to go in and bust it up.
Exactly. I'm not seeing that happen. Now, on the other piece, with the MPS piece, this goes clearly back to the piece with the unions and what I was saying, that if this goes to local municipalities and their ability to now negotiate with their union workers around the benefits piece. That's where the Walker team is saying there's going to be some relief, because they're basically going back and saying the state's commitment for 2/3 of the cost of education is not there. It's not going to be there. It was barely there when Doyle was governor. He went back and in his first year, he whacked $250 million out of the UW budget, but he kind of held harmless the K-12 system. And then there was some backwards creep where 1 or 2 percentage points in that 2/3 commitment was shaved. Now what they're saying is that we can't afford the 2/3 commitment. But if we give you the flexibility to make up for it, that's where you can recover. But it's going to take some courage on the part of local elected officials to use that tool. I just worry they're not going to use it, and that's where you're going to see the $200 million plus hit that goes not just to MPS, but to school districts.
You know what's
around
interesting?
the state.
I can't see the MPS school board trying to get this money from the union.
The interesting thing about both these proposals, the UW proposal and what's alleged to be coming for MPS, which is going to be horrible, is, and I have no reason to doubt it, they will be drastic proposals. They will be drastic, just like killing collective bargaining in this state is drastic. That isn't the guy who ran for governor. He didn't tell us that he was going to start whacking all these things and destroy MPS and take apart the UW system and kill collective bargaining. He came off as kind of a nice guy. We're conservative, but now he's saying, but we've got this like $3 billion budget deficit. We just don't have any money, so it takes drastic solutions, and we're going to have to tear up UW. We're going to have to tear up MPS. We're going to have to kill collective bargaining rights. In Governor Doyle's last budget, he started that budget with a $6 billion budget deficit. And he didn't do any of those things. He didn't have to kill collective bargaining rights. He didn't have to lay off tens of thousands of state workers or take all their rights away. He didn't have to tear up all these systems. This is a phony excuse to do what Jim Doyle succeeded in doing, facing with the same economic problems and even worse economic problems.
But Joel,
and he got through it. Those guys didn't like the way he did it. He didn't like he took money out of transportation and put it into MPS.
was
Rated
wrong.
funds.
I'm glad that he did.
He borrowed and he used the one-time
of destroying
and he used the
public
one-time
schools.
stimulus money, and because
That was only $1.3 billion. That wasn't the
and
$6
the
billion.
legislature didn't budget responsibly. 2 years ago, we're in this pickle today.
Is it true?
The deficit is less today than he faced.
not.
I think we're seeing the death of the public employee union in Wisconsin, and I think they know it's coming. And like a mad dog, they are fighting and fighting and
And
fighting.
why do you want to kill unions?
I'm just saying, I think that's where we're at
Why
right
would you
now.
want to do that? Why would you want to kill unions?
Because Walker and the people in charge of the legislature right now, they feel that unions, that public employee unions, are causing the financial problems in the state of Wisconsin.
They absolutely are not.
But
They absolutely are not.
That is part of the
they're hurting
incremental
local
creep
government.
that has
They're hurting local
employees
government big
certainly in the
time.
last 8 years. There had been incremental creep by union power and in terms of its ability to bargain with the state. UW system, there too, they were allowed to unionize, and yet written into the law, and we talked about this, is their ability to act as administrators at the same time. You can't have it both ways. You can't be part of the administrative team in the law and at the same time bargain against yourself. And faculty was given that right to do that. It makes no sense.
Every union that has gone into negotiations during this horrible economic times that we've been experiencing, all they do is give up. The contract that was turned down because Scott Walker didn't want the legislature to pass it, you know what they bargained for? No raises. It was a wage freeze.
They didn't want to sit down with the next governor and talk and negotiate then, but now he's supposed to sit down and talk with them now.
That's collective bargaining. That's negotiating. He didn't even try to negotiate.
You can't negotiate when you have nothing to give, and the state is $3.8 billion in the hole.
Well, okay, now let's talk about the next thing, which is somewhat related to that. MATC, the Milwaukee Area Technical College, they reached an agreement with the teachers union this week that gives them a 3-year contract. They don't increase their pension contributions at all. They're guaranteed no layoffs for 3 years. This is an incredibly strong union.
Yeah.
Did they do this? Did they try to sneak this in?
Yes.
Before
it was done in public.
Before the Walker
Of course they did.
They read the tea leaves.
They passed it before.
They read the tea leaves.
Before the collective bargaining was destroyed in our state, of course. Why wouldn't they? You know what that great contract has? no pay raises for 2 years. It's a wage freeze for 2 years. It's a 3-year contract. They don't get a raise until the 3rd year. I mean, this is the kind of givebacks that unions are always doing in labor negotiations these days. It is not these grabby unions, greedy, taking huge chunks out of the budget. That is a fraud that Scott Walker is trying to perpetrate. Unions under these conditions are. We've talked on this show about some of the horrible things at Harley and other places where they're coming up with 2-tiered wage systems so that new employees don't even have any protections. Those are the kinds of things that unions are getting out of bargaining, but at least they're bargaining. At least they feel that they can fight for some of the things and settle for some of the things. If Scott Walker wants to take more things away from state employees, he also has to give them a little something they want. That's what collective bargaining
Nothing
is.
To give, Joel.
There is plenty to give. And Scott Walker has half of the deficit that Jim Doyle did, and he didn't have to wipe out collective bargaining.
I do have to clarify that this station, if people don't know, is a part of MATC. So I think that this was brilliant gamesmanship by maybe both MATC and the teachers union. But I do wonder, is this going to come back to haunt them?
Well, I think it might, because I think this will.
Republicans are very vicious in the legislature.
No, Joel.
They've already threatened MATC.
Joel, please. I'm tired of Republicans being talked to with the hateful rhetoric that you use on the show. We're not evil. We're not out to kill people.
You are the masters of hate rhetoric, as a matter of fact.
I think what the MATC board did this week will only serve to spur on legislation in Madison that will, again, help taxpayers. And you had a bunch of people who nobody knows on that board because they're unaccountable, they're unelected. They passed this deal real quickly, and you're going to have unelected boards like the MATC board. I think in the future you're going to have to become an elected person so that you have to stand up for your vote to increase taxes, so that the taxpayers can put a name and a face to the people who are taking more money out of their wallets. So what the MATC board did was kind of sneaky, but I think in the long run it will come back to haunt them.
Glenn Grothman, Republican state senator, threatened MATC because of that vote. That's not hateful rhetoric. That's a description of what he did. And let's watch and see if he then attacks MATC and takes money from them.
What he said, that if they have the resources to cover the cost of this contract with their current tax levy, then they don't need the additional help from the state, given.
So he's threatening to take money away from them, right?
But that's not hateful. That's just an
he's the one that
reality.
called it hateful.
The economic growth been hateful. Every week you call Republicans, we're monsters and we're bad people and we want to throw our own mothers into the snowbank.
After 100 years is pretty monstrous.
Hateful. I do think though that it is a political and economic reality that when that budget was passed, whatever resource the state puts in, and the resource that they give to the technical colleges is not that great because they're all independent tax levying authorities. That money that comes in directly from the state GPR, that will probably be lessened. I'm almost certain
that's to an institution that graduates more African Americans than all the other state institutions combined. That is an institution that puts those graduates into jobs at a higher rate than any other higher education institution. And Glenn Grothman wants to attack them.
We're all racist.
Wants to attack them.
Gerard, you're a racist.
There's
the race card.
You said that word.
What I'm hoping is that all of the tech colleges are able to make credible arguments as to why they should continue to receive the GPR that they get.
All right. Let's take just a few minutes to talk about the Brewers. Spring training underway. People are pretty excited about the season. Ricky Weeks, Prince Fielder, Ryan Braun, Zach Greinke. Some folks are saying this is the year. Real quickly, are we going to see the Brewers in the World Series? 10 seconds.
I'll vote for that.
Yes?
Yes.
No way. No way.
Hey, this is Wisconsin's year.
They aren't even going to win their division, but they will be better because now they have some pitching.
All right. We'll talk about that next week.
I see why he's so negative.
All right. Back to the budget wars.
I'm an evil Republican.
Back to the budget wars for just a minute. Wisconsin may be at the center of the action right now, but it's not the only place where the fight has been going on. When Rick Horowitz heard all the arguments, pro and con, it makes him want to help. Rick.
Hi there, back with another time-saving tip for you folks who follow the news. Budget conversations. Anyone wants to talk to you about balancing a budget without talking about raising taxes? Walk away. If he says raising taxes is totally off the table, you can do it all with spending cuts, keep walking. This man is a fool, or he thinks that you are. Absolutely, you need to cut spending, but that can't be all of it, and anyone even halfway rational knows it. It's like being down in the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and you know that the only common sense way to hike out of the hole you're in is to put one foot in front of the other, left, right, until you get back to level ground, both feet. But the true believers insist that you only use one foot. Ever tried hopping out of the Grand Canyon? Good luck with that. Not that common sense matters to some people, even when it comes to government. I've got to tell you, though, this whole no new taxes ever for anything business isn't about governing. It isn't even about politics. It's become religion. It's theocracy in action, and we're all supposed to kneel down before the ayatollahs of cut and cut some more. And no, they don't get any extra credit for keeping their promises, for doing what they said they'd do. A rotten idea doesn't turn into a good idea just because you're too stubborn to get rid of it. Not that that matters to the true believers. Actually, I'm being unfair. They're not all true believers. In fact, some of them, your cable anchors, your local radio and TV blowhards, don't believe a word of it. All this talk about cutting taxes and spending to cut the deficit, nothing but spin. Screaming about deficits gives them a convenient excuse to hack away at the kinds of boogeymen they've been wanting to kill off for years. AmeriCorps, National Public Radio, Planned Parenthood, the National Endowments for the Arts and the Humanities, and of course, unions, public employee salaries and benefits and bargaining rights. Eliminate every one of those things, you still wouldn't make a dent in the deficit. Then again, for these particular people, the deficit isn't really the problem. The deficit is the cover story. So really, don't waste your time.
Thank Ricks, and thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Nice suit, Gerard.